The last couple of weeks have been pretty devastating in terms of racial violence and tension in our country. But the truth is, it hasn't just been the last couple of weeks. I wish I could stand here and say that I fully understand the issues and have the answers, but I don't. Racism is something we need to confront, but preaching an impassioned sermon or posting something thought-provoking on Facebook, it's not going to change things overnight. We've got to listen and realize that some of us won't ever fully understand the impact of racism. And that's why listening is so important. Listening to the voices of the oppressed and the voice of the Holy Spirit. That's what it takes to be the church.
Kick off your shoes and have some fun. Get ready, get set, let's go. If we never go, we'll never know. 'Cause you and I, oh yeah, we could fly so high, so high. Moment pass us by, pass us by. I won't let this moment pass us by. I won't let this moment pass us
by. In this episode of Be the Church, I've invited my friend Dr. Dorrell Briscoe to be part of the show. Dorrell has written a book called There's a Storm Coming, How the American Church Can Lead Through Times of Crisis. You may remember a few episodes back that Dorrell and I had a Zoom call to discuss racism. We only aired a few minutes of our conversation, but today we'll revisit some of that conversation and hear a message that Dorrell prepared to help us respond well with what's going on right now. Stick around for this very important episode of Be the Church.
Make sure you sign up for our Vote Virtual Vacation Bible School. The link is on the FUMC Victoria Children Facebook page. It's going to be awesome!
Instead of bringing your kids to VBS, let's bring VBS to your kids.
But we're not finished yet.
Help kids understand what it means to listen to, focus on, and follow Jesus.
A stands for admit.
Bible stories.
They were afraid that they were about to become fish food.
Games.
Do you understand the rules?
Yes, ma'am!
Origami crafts.
The first half of the flower complete.
Powerful teaching.
Proverbs 3:5.
Great music.
I'm a wave walker.
I don't know what it's like to be oppressed because of my race. I don't know what it's like to be told that, well, at least it's not the 1950s, or I've never owned slaves, so don't look at me, it's not my fault. I don't know what it feels like to see someone in my neighborhood or my state or my country killed because they were the same skin color as me. I've never had to worry that my child, my blue-eyed children, would be accused or wrongfully killed because they were the wrong color. I don't know what that's like, but I hate that some people do. My good friend Dorrell Briscoe, author of There's a Storm Coming, has a message of hope and a message of how we can respond to racism at this moment, especially those of us that have never truly experienced it.
Well, good afternoon, friends. My name is Dorrell Briscoe. Dorrell, if you don't know me, that's what my friends call me. And I wanted to hop on here real quick and give a message to white America, white Christians, my white friends. As many of you know, I have just published a book called There's a Storm Coming, How the American Church Can Lead Through Times of Racial Crisis. My book is all about preparing for the type of storms that we find ourselves in right now, leading through them, and then figuring out how we can make change from them. I'm not going to talk too much about that. I'm just so grateful for the outpouring of support. You can pick it up on Amazon. It's super cool. But what I want to talk about today is some of the a main question that many of my white friends have asked me lately. I have worked at 2 large, predominantly white churches. I've gone to 5 different white colleges, predominantly white colleges. I'm married to a white woman. So I love white folk. And I got a lot of really sweet friends that are desperately trying to figure out what to do in this time of crisis that we find ourselves in. And I want to talk first to white folks who are, believers, love Jesus, love His Word. I want to talk to you first, and then I want to talk to white pastors and faith leaders. First of all, to my white brothers and sisters, you have to understand right now that every step you take towards reconciliation, towards unity, towards understanding where this pain, where the rage, where the disappointment comes from, every step you take is an actionable step. I think sometimes what I've seen is that it's easy to kind of beat yourself up. You think I'm not doing enough. I don't know what to do. But I just want to encourage you simply with this, that every step you take towards that, it is an actionable step. There's a couple of practical things you can do. From your social media standpoint, you can be a good steward of that. What do I mean by that? I mean, what would it look like for you to amplify black and brown voices that may be able to articulate the pain of our times better than you can? It doesn't mean that you have to post every single day and do this and do this, but what it does mean is you being strategic and intentional to amplify voices, thought leaders, pastors that are communicating, that are working with communities that are dealing with these issues, dealing with issues of police brutality, dealing with issues of mass incarceration, dealing with issues of systemic racism. You don't have to have everything figured out. But what you do have to have is a heart and a desire to learn, a heart to want to be a part of change. We got to do this together. And so you can use your social media platform as a way to do that. You can also talk to, call, text, and hold your Christian leaders accountable. Right now, we need the church to stand up and to rise like never before. And the church has had a long history of activism and fighting for civil rights. And so speaking to some of my white Christian brothers and sisters, what are your pastors doing right now? Ask them, call them, talk to them. We need their voice right now. Desperately, And so those are a couple practical ways. There's a lot of organizations that you can support. I don't have time to get into all that right now. I would encourage you to read the book. But what does it look like from your social media standpoint? To amplify voices that maybe you don't quite know, but you feel communicate this issue better than you. And then what are you doing when it comes to reaching out to your pastors and faith leaders asking them what they're doing. And now I want to talk mainly to my white pastors, my fellow faith leaders. You know, the book really was written for you. That's who I had in mind when I first started writing on this project more than 3 years ago. I want to talk to you, and I want to encourage you right now that if you have a black or brown person on staff, now would be a really good time to call them and check on them and text them and connect with them. Knowing that they are seen and that they are heard is so critical to their emotional health. And so I want to encourage you to do just that. Reach out to your staff members of color. Check on them, call them, let them know that you're praying for them. Let them know that you're thinking for them. Ask them, listen to them. That is so critical in this time. If you don't have any people of color on your staff, I would encourage you to reach out and connect with any of your black and brown friends. And take a moment to listen to them. Take a moment to cross cultural and racial barriers. Seek to understand their pain. The more you are educated, the more you are aware, the more that you surround yourself in that pain, the more informed and the more articulate you will be when it comes to responding to and leading through this time of crisis. The next thing I want to talk to you about is you have to understand that what we're dealing with right now is highly complex and nuanced. And one trouble that I've seen in my years of ministry is a tendency for white pastors to say, well, you know, at the end of the day, Jesus is only going to be the one that's going to change hearts. Or that, you know, this is all just a sin issue. You are right, but it doesn't stop there. Systemic racism is historical. It is complex. There's many layers to it. And so we need you right now to learn, to grow, to read books, to watch documentaries. Yes, it is sin. But you have to understand that that sin is rooted in hundreds and hundreds of years and laws and policies of oppression. And so the more you're informed, just like I said, you got to talk to your black and brown brothers and sisters. You got to start to learn and listen to thought leaders. Listen to voices that have walked through this path, that have led and that are currently doing the work right now. It is so imperative. And finally, at the end of the day, you got to understand that what we're dealing with is going to take systemic and organizational change. Not just in our cities and communities, but also in our own churches. You're going to have to ask yourself, what portion of the budget do we need to devote to, do we need to invest in when it comes to reconciliation, unity, and justice? What type of personnel do we need to assign to begin to make inroads and to close that gap? We've got to think beyond just an individualistic standpoint. We've got to be able to see things from a macro level and begin to make organizational and systemic change within our churches. And I believe that once we do that, once that becomes habitual, that we're constantly seeking what needs to change, figuring out what we need to do, I believe that we'll have the credibility and the knowledge that to begin to make change in our communities and in our cities. White pastors, we need you to meet with police chiefs. We've been doing it. White pastors, we need you to hold listening sessions in your congregations. We've been doing it. We need you to attend city council meetings and fighting for change. We've been doing it. We need you as brothers and sisters to lock arms with and stand with us Our nation is burning. Our nation is hurting. We are in desperate times. But I believe that God has put us here on earth for such a time as this. We've got to continue to fight, and we need you in the game. Use your voices, use your power, use your platform to amplify the pain that we've been experiencing. I believe that God can do this. I believe that God can heal our land. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I get hopeless. I fall into despair. But I always remember what Jesus said. With man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. And so I appreciate you tuning in. And I want to encourage you that I know it seems overwhelming, but with God, it is possible. I want to encourage you to do those three things. Understand that the definition of systemic racism and what's going on is highly complex. Seek to learn. Reach out to your black staff members or to black friends. Connect with them. I am so grateful for my white pastors from all across the theological spectrum, all across the denominational spectrum. Presbyterians, Methodists, Lutherans have reached out to me. How can I help? What can I do? I'm listening. Thank you. We need more of that. God's going to help us. And it's our time. Martin Luther King, as eloquent as he was, he's not coming back. Fannie Lou Hamer, as powerful as her voice was in Mississippi, she's not coming back. Frederick Douglass, as brilliant as he was, the energy that he gave towards abolition of slavery, he's not coming back. It's up to us, right here and right now. We have an opportunity. It seems dark. It's desperate. We don't know what to do, but let me tell you something. God can make a way and heal our land, but it's going to take us to lock arms and to lead. It is time for the church to lead. So I appreciate you tuning in. I love you. Thank you for all the love and support.
Love is good to be loved.
You should be kind like always.
You're open to love anybody that needs it. Because a lot of people in this world need to be loved.
That really should be how we all live. It's when you feel connected to God and you're open, and so open your heart to God.
Dorrell and I visited through Zoom several weeks ago. It was actually during a time when there hadn't been much media coverage of tragic events, and it was about a week before the video of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery came out. And Dorrell was stressing the importance of leading before a crisis. That's why we can't let this pass. We're in the midst of a racial crisis, but we cannot stop leading. We cannot stop calling for equality and justice. We cannot stop building relationships once the protests stop.
What I'm doing right now, even in my community in downtown Durham, I'm connecting and building a partnership with 3 AME churches that are within a mile from our church in downtown. And I approach their pastors. I'm like, I need to learn from you. I'm new in this community. I don't know enough. We're a new faith community. We want to follow your lead. If we want to follow your lead in bringing the kingdom to this area in Durham. And we have partnered with their food pantry and clothing closet. We've done a pulpit swap already. And we're talking 3-4 months into this relationship. I mean, me relentlessly trying to build this, humble myself, approach them. 2 other AME churches, we're working with them, but we're trying to build this partnership now. We're doing it now where we can build. And my dream is to slowly build this kind of this justice centered partnership with first AME churches. And then as our church, we're becoming UMC. I don't know if you know that around, right?
We had a conversation a while back. You were talking about that.
Yep.
And I knew,
we are. We are.
We'll
We'll be UMC. Man, I'm happy to be part of the family, man. Y'all finally got me.
That's right. That's right.
Man. And so, yeah, man. I mean, we're laying those seeds now. So when things happen, we can pull from the resources, the power, the platform of these other churches, and hopefully amplify what we're saying as a church, not just a single body, but a collaborative body of churches. And so what would it look like for you right now to approach the African American UMC church and talk through what would a partnership look like? Maybe you guys are doing more charity like events, which is important, but it's not justice. And I think there are two separate things. Charity is different than justice. We need both. Mm-hmm. I think charity is a bit more palatable to conservative white folk. But in my opinion, as you break down those barriers, expose them to glaring inequalities that still exist today, perhaps you start to pull on some heartstrings, and they start to see a bigger need, and that's when you can start talking about racism. That's when you can start, and you can have a more receptive audience, because you guys are doing the work, partnering with other churches, breaking down barriers, cultural, ethnic, racial barriers. And so when the time does come to talk about racism, you have far more credibility, far more buy-in, far more influence, because you've been doing the work beforehand.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so...
And it doesn't have to be. I liked your pulpit swap earlier, but I gotta tell you, I don't think that would work. I would put the folks to sleep down the road. I have heard Brother Zeddy preach, and
but you know what? If I can, and I know you're being humble, but if I can respectfully push back on that, the fact the problem in this country is that too often the burden is placed on Black Christians across the color line. Mm. It is our job to go to their church, the big church, mega church, whatever church. We will more often go over there than they will go over to us. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. So the fact that if you come and you show up and you preach, let me tell you something. I think people. Oh, sorry. Am I here?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, there I am. I think people will appreciate who you are and your quirks and your style, and the fact that you're willing, though, to come and minister to, love on, connect with a Black church. My friend, that says a lot.
Thank you for joining us today on Be the Church. I want to encourage you to purchase Dorrell's book, There's a Storm Coming. It's currently #1 on Amazon's list of Christian bestsellers. Get it, read it, give it to a friend, and then buy another one. Hey, if you're looking for a place to worship tomorrow, First United Methodist Church will have our second in-person worship service at 9:30 a.m. in our Ignite Contemporary Worship space. You'll need to wear a mask, or you can watch the live feed of the service on Facebook. And of course, we'll see you next week on Be the Church.
Oh
up for our VOPE Virtual Vacation Bible School. The link is on the FUMC Victoria Children Facebook page. It's going to be awesome!
Instead of bringing your kids to VBS, let's bring VBS to your kids.
But we're not finished yet.
Help kids understand what it means to listen to, focus on, and follow Jesus.
A stands for Edmund.
Bible stories.
They were afraid that they were about to become fish food.
Games.
Do you understand the rules?
Yes, ma'am!
Origami crafts.
The first half of the flower complete.
Powerful teaching.
Proverbs 3:5.
Great music.
I'm a wave walker.
Love is good. To be loved.
You should be kind like always.
You're open to love anybody that needs it. Because a lot of people in this world need to be loved.
That really should be how we all live. It's when you feel connected to God and you're open, and so open your heart to God.